It's not by chance that you're viewing this video. There's a reason you're here. Everything is unfolding exactly as it should. Trust the timing of your life and know that you're being led to where you're meant to be. As you stumble on this video, perhaps not by chance, it will serve to awaken your spirit. You've been feeling a deep change inside. The things that once ran in your family have stopped with you. The cycles that kept others stuck were broken when you chose to heal. This isn't just about your freedom. It's about generations being restored because you said yes to your calling. You didn't just break a curse, you ended the pattern. Let's break this down into 7 powerful chapters to see what you've done and what God is building through you. Before we go deeper, please like, share, and subscribe. This message isn't just content. It's a divine confirmation, a spiritual word for those chosen to shift their bloodline, not just survive it. To everyone giving through super thanks, may God bless you richly. Your generosity, support, and strong faith are seen and truly appreciated. You're not just viewers. You're part of a divine movement. If this speaks to your heart, type 77 in the comments. That number is not random. It's a sacred sign, a way of saying to God in heaven that you're ready. Ready for generational freedom, ready to live without fear, ready to become the example. Not just to break the pattern, but to change the legacy. Not everyone will stay until the end of this message. Only those who are meant to finish what others couldn't. Those who stay will find clarity, divine confirmation, and a deeper understanding of their purpose. This isn't a message you hear once and forget. It's alive. It's spiritual DNA. It's healing for your bloodline. It's the sound of change breaking for good. Come back to this message when the battle feels heavy. Watch it again when you need strength. Each time, God will reveal more. Now let's go deeper. Chapter 1. The cycle was real, but so is your calling. Generational cycles are more than habits. They are spiritual patterns, emotional reactions, and beliefs passed down through families. These cycles often seem normal, but they are not from God. They show up as addiction, poverty, broken marriages, secrets, mental illness, unhealed trauma, silence when truth was needed, and shrinking back when confidence was meant to rise. You saw it growing up. At first, you didn't question it because it was all you knew. You saw your family suffer in silence. No one talked about the real issues. You noticed how strongholds were disguised as personality traits. You watched certain patterns repeat, generation after generation, like they were on a spiritual cycle. Maybe it was fatherlessness. Maybe it was shame around money. Maybe it was broken relationships, betrayal, or always coming close to success, but never quite reaching it. At some point, you began repeating those same patterns without even realizing it. The same arguments, the same fears, the same emotional reactions, the same blind spots. It all felt familiar, but something in your spirit began to stir. A quiet voice whispered, "This is not who you are." That whisper was your calling. That unrest you felt was a divine disruption. The enemy wanted you to accept dysfunction and call it destiny. He tried to convince you that struggle was your portion, that chaos was normal, and that bondage was just part of life. But God placed something different in you. A holy resistance, a spiritual restlessness that wouldn't let you stay comfortable in dysfunction. You began asking questions others were afraid to ask. You started feeling things others couldn't explain. That wasn't weakness. That was your discernment waking up. Your discomfort wasn't random. It was divine. That confusion wasn't just emotional. It was a spiritual shaking meant to wake you up. What seemed like overthinking was actually spiritual awareness breaking through old patterns. You weren't just born into your family, you were sent into it. Not to follow what was, but to help shape what will be. God didn't call you to escape the pattern. He called you to end it, to face it, name it, and confront it with boldness. You weren't chosen to tiptoe around dysfunction. You were chosen to break it. That's why you've always felt different. That's why you couldn't settle like others. That's why your spirit felt heavy in certain places. It wasn't just sensitivity, it was your spiritual assignment. You carry the burden of change because you carry the anointing to bring it. Yes, the cycle was real, but so is your calling. And your calling is stronger than any curse. What ran in your family ran into you, and with you it ends. Chapter 2. You made a new path and didn't follow the old one. Everyone before you walked a certain path, not because it was right, but because it was all they knew. That path was shaped by fear, survival, tradition, and emotional habits passed down. It seemed like loyalty, but it was actually bondage. It looked like wisdom, but it was really avoidance. Many stayed on that path, not because they didn't notice the cracks, but because they didn't believe they had the right to leave. They learned how to live inside the dysfunction. They even learned how to decorate it and call it normal. They passed it down through generations as if it were a treasured heirloom, ingrained beliefs and unspoken rules disguised as truth. This is just how life is. This is how relationships work. This is what we do. This is who we are. These phrases, repeated without question, formed the boundaries of identity and behavior for those who came before you. But something within you, divinely planted and deeply awakened, rose up and broke that line of thinking in two. You looked around with clarity and dared to ask one bold, sacred question. Why does it have to be this way? That single, courageous question shattered the spiritual silence that had lingered for generations. It disrupted the foundation of inherited patterns. It pushed you out of the crowd, out of conformity, and marked you with divine distinction. That moment wasn't merely a thought. It was a spiritual awakening. God ignited something deep within you, something that could never again be silenced or put back to sleep. And from that point forward, you found yourself unable to fake peace in places that disturbed your spirit. You could no longer pretend that dysfunction made sense or deserved your agreement. You could no longer wear a smile in environments that slowly suffocated your soul. You began to pull away, not out of arrogance or superiority, but as a necessary act of preservation. You didn't withdraw because you believed you were better than those around you, but because your spirit, awakened by divine truth, knew with certainty there is more than this. You pulled away from empty conversations. You stepped back from traditions that had no truth. You distanced yourself from relationships that required your silence. You chose growth. You started fasting, even when no one around you saw a reason to. You began praying and writing in your journal while others were busy binge-watching and trying to numb their pain. You cried by yourself. You wrestled with God. You questioned everything you had been taught. You weren't trying to rebel. You were trying to wake up. While others stayed spiritually asleep, you were being awakened. While others were trying to fit in, you were being changed. You weren't just saying no to their path. You were making a new one. You stepped into a wilderness with no map, no guide, and no praise. All you had was your faith and your fight. You built a way forward with your bare hands and your hurting heart. Yes, it was hard. Yes, it was lonely. Yes, it made you feel like the black sheep. But that was the sign. You were set apart for something greater. You were walking in divine separation, chosen one. You weren't meant to copy what others did. You were meant to build something new. The tears you cried while others were comfortable, that was sacred work. The seasons when no one understood you, that was spiritual training. The times you questioned your own sanity for going against the crowd, that was heaven cheering for you, even when earth didn't understand. God didn't call you to follow the old pattern. He called you to break it. He didn't ask you to repeat the map. He chose you to rewrite it. What you started is not a detour. It's a divine highway. Generations after you will walk on it with ease, so don't look for approval in places you were meant to leave. Don't expect people who are still walking in circles to understand your straight path. You didn't just choose a different route. You created a new one. Yes, it cost you comfort, but it gave you a crown. Yes, it cost you connection, but it protected your calling. Yes, it felt like isolation, but it was actually elevation. The wilderness you walk through is now becoming a clear path for others to follow. The freedom you fought for will echo through future generations. They will never forget your obedience. Chapter 3. God gave you revelation others couldn't handle. Chosen one, let's be clear. The reason you always felt different isn't your imagination. It's because God opened your eyes. While others walked in circles, stuck in tradition, silence, and denial, you began to see what was hidden. You noticed patterns so deeply rooted in your family, culture, or environment that most people never questioned them. But you couldn't ignore what God showed you. You saw the spiritual roots behind emotional reactions. You saw how pain was passed down like an inheritance. You saw how silence was used as a shield, how pride was mistaken for strength, how trauma showed up as personality. You noticed patterns of avoidance, manipulation, self-sabotage, and guilt, all passed down and treated as normal. And when you tried to speak up, to name the bondage, people saw you as rebellious, dramatic, or disloyal. But you weren't trying to cause conflict. You were trying to speak truth. They couldn't receive it. They weren't ready. They were still numb, still blind, still holding on to the mask. But you couldn't go back to pretending. You couldn't unsee what God had shown you, because what He gave you wasn't just knowledge, it was revelation. And there's a difference. Insight gives information, revelation gives authority. You weren't just noticing dysfunction, you were being called to break it. You weren't just seeing patterns, you were being positioned to end them. The fire and frustration you felt weren't just emotions. They were righteous anger, heaven rising up in you. That anger was a divine alarm, telling your soul that something was out of order and had to be faced. The tears you cried in private weren't weakness. They were spiritual intercession. They were silent warfare, breaking chains behind closed doors. God gave you vision because He knew you wouldn't run. He knew you would wrestle, cry, and question everything, but still stay faithful to the assignment, even when it isolated you, even when it cost you relationships, even when it made you question your own sanity. You didn't just gain clarity, you received heaven's blueprint for your bloodline. And with every revelation, you broke ties with deception. You broke agreements with lies. You tore down altars built in ignorance. You stood in truth where no one had stood before, fully aware and led by God. That's why the warfare came. That's why the attacks increased. When you walk in revelation, darkness takes notice. You became a threat, not just to the enemy, but to every generational spirit that had survived on silence and ignorance. But the enemy didn't expect your endurance. He thought you'd give up and go back to pretending. And now your lineage is reaping the benefits of the vision God gave you. Your family is being covered by your spiritual awareness. Your bloodline is being realigned and healed through your obedience. And chosen one, it's clear. The revelation you received was never meant for you alone, but for generations to come. Chapter 4. You went through hell so others wouldn't have to. You are the chosen one. Don't diminish what you've survived. Remember the sleepless nights, the days you struggled just to get out of bed, the confusion that made you question your own sanity, the relentless spiritual battles, the betrayals that cut so deeply it felt as if your very soul had been torn apart. There were moments when everything inside you screamed, "Give up." But something greater, something divine whispered, "Hold on." You didn't endure all of that for nothing. There was a purpose in your pain. That pain you endured was neither random nor meaningless. It was sacred, for you walked through fires that others could not even approach, battling spiritual forces, destructive mindsets, and generational strongholds that had long ruled your bloodline. You broke patterns that had once destroyed marriages, silenced curses that had plagued children, and shattered chains that had kept your family bound in the same cycles of struggle for decades. Even though the curse had deep and stubborn roots, roots of fear, trauma, shame, and silence that had buried truth so deeply no one dared to uncover them. Yet you did, because you were the one God entrusted to step into that darkness, carrying both a lamp to reveal and a sword to fight. You uncovered and confronted the very thing that had long poisoned your family line. While others were preoccupied with outward appearances, you chose to fight for true deliverance. Where others avoided pain, you faced it head-on. You endured the blows, carried the burden, and shed tears, tears no one else saw, but heaven did. And heaven recorded every single one. Your pain was not in vain, it had a divine purpose. Every time you felt like giving up but chose not to, another generational chain was broken. With every act of forgiveness in place of bitterness, healing began to take root. Each time you worshiped through your weeping, angels were dispatched on your behalf. What seemed like personal breakdowns became breakthroughs for those who would come after you. You did not merely survive, you interceded through your suffering. Your life became a sacred courtroom where spiritual freedom was declared not just for yourself, but for generations to come. You endured unimaginable trials, not merely to escape the torment yourself, but to ensure that the gates of that hell were closed behind you, preventing others from falling into the same darkness. You passed through the fire, not only to emerge purified, but to blaze a trail of light and hope for others to follow. Your children, your nieces and nephews, your spiritual sons and daughters. Though they may never fully comprehend the intensity of the battles you fought or the weight of the war you carried, they will nonetheless live in the freedom your sacrifice secured. They will step into blessings they did not earn because you paid the price. They will experience clarity in their lives because you were willing to wrestle through the fog of confusion. They will rest in peace because you chose to rise and go to war on their behalf. They will come to know true love because you chose to break the cycle of bitterness. You endured trials and traumas that by all natural accounts should have destroyed you. Yet instead, those very afflictions became the divine instruments that positioned you for purpose. Through it all, you were being shaped into a bridge, spanning the gap between generational bondage and generational breakthrough. Chosen one, understand this. You did not walk through the fires of hell to garner sympathy. You endured them to establish a legacy. God, in his infinite wisdom, knew that what would shatter others would birth something eternal through you. Your suffering was not without meaning. You were actively rewriting the history of your bloodline. You are the living answer to the silent cries and unspoken prayers of your ancestors, prayers they did not even know how to articulate. You are the fulfillment of a promise that the forces of hell did everything they could to prevent. Your life stands as undeniable proof that pain is not the final author. Purpose is. So stand tall. The fire that came to consume you instead refined and commissioned you. You went through hell, not for your own sake alone, but so that others would never have to walk that path. And now, in due season, heaven is preparing to reward you openly for everything you faithfully endured in the secret place. Chapter 5. Beyond breaking, erasing the blueprint. You have not merely broken the curse, you have completely erased the original blueprint. There exists a profound and divine distinction between breaking something and entirely erasing it. To break a curse is to disrupt a destructive cycle. It is to sever the chain that kept dysfunction in motion. However, to erase the blueprint is to operate on an entirely higher level of spiritual authority. Erasing the blueprint means that the foundational design, the very instructions that once constructed the pattern of dysfunction, has been permanently deleted. It signifies that the original map which once guided the enemy's return no longer exists. There is no familiar path, no door left open through which darkness can re-enter. No remnants, no residue, no trace remains. The curse is not simply broken. It has been removed from the system altogether, leaving no evidence it ever existed. You didn't merely stop the behavior, you uprooted its very source. You didn't just alter your habits, you severed ancient spiritual contracts and courageously descended into the hidden, unspoken places where few dare to tread, uncovering suppressed emotions and dismantling generational agreements shrouded in silence. And in doing so, you ensured that the trauma ends here, that the cycles of fear, shame, and secrecy are broken with you, so that no more children grow up confused, no more marriages are bound by fear instead of love, no more lives are lived behind masks of normalcy, while the soul silently suffocates because you, with unmatched bravery, chose to stand up, to expose what others concealed, to feel what others avoided, to heal what others ignored, and through that sacred, painful, redemptive journey, you have erased the enemy's blueprint and rewritten the future with light, truth, and freedom. Shillengaging the enemies has no legal grounds to stand on, no familiar entry point to exploit, because you have closed the breach and sealed the door completely, and heaven, in all its glory, bore witness to your obedience, recording the exact moment you chose to turn away from the familiar path of brokenness, documenting the day you firmly declared no more. Even though every circumstance might have justified continuing in the old ways, yet it wasn't only heaven that took notice. Hell did too, and it trembled when you refused to react as your parents once did. It panicked when you chose not to pass down the pain that had been passed to you, and it lost its grip entirely the moment you forgave, the moment you surrendered, the moment you chose the path of healing over hardness. And now, the earth is about to behold with awe what heaven has already approved, and what hell has already feared. The fruit of your faith is now evident, for your family tree has been reshaped, its root system entirely restructured, the soil beneath it purified of generational toxicity, and the future, once shadowed by inherited pain, has been divinely rewritten. You are not merely continuing the bloodline, you are redeeming it, standing as the first of your kind, the origin point of a new lineage, marked not by the patterns of the past but by a new name, a new rhythm, and a new legacy woven with grace, grounded in truth, and empowered by a strength that transcends history. The old blueprint has been completely erased, and in its place, a divine design has been downloaded into your spirit, positioning you no longer as a mere reflection of what once was, but as the very foundation of what is yet to come, the cornerstone, the pillar, the new standard, the sacred bridge that carries your lineage from generational bondage into generational blessing. And from this pivotal point forward, every step you take is sowing seeds of transformation, not only for yourself, but for all who will walk the path behind you. For you didn't merely break the curse, you obliterated the blueprint from which it operated. And because of that courageous act, everything changes. Chapter 6. Now the blessings of heaven can flow without interruption. With the curse lifted and the old blueprint erased, space has finally been made for what heaven had been holding in reserve. These blessings were never denied, rather they were delayed, held back, not out of punishment, but in anticipation of the one who would rise with clean hands and a heart fully surrendered to divine purpose. That person is you. The issue was never the absence of blessings, but rather the presence of a blockage. For generations, many cried out for breakthrough, yet the altar remained cluttered. The spiritual pipeline was obstructed, not by divine unwillingness, but by the lingering presence of old vows, unresolved trauma, and unrepented agreements. Now that those hindrances have been removed, the way is finally clear for heaven's abundance to pour forth. You, the one who was chosen, appeared with a remarkable boldness and unwavering courage to confront and cleanse what countless others before you lacked the strength, clarity, or willingness to address. You were the one who closed the doors that had long remained open, doors that permitted chaos, pain, and dysfunction to persist. You severed the soul ties that bound generations in cycles of brokenness and emotional bondage. You purified your bloodline, not through ease or comfort, but through intentional surrender and personal sacrifice. And now, as a result of your obedience and faithfulness, the heavens themselves stand wide open above you. What was once stalled, delayed, or held back is now permitted to move forward freely. The divine anointing that was previously obstructed by spiritual hindrances and ancestral patterns is now flowing with power and clarity. The favor that was once blocked by generational strongholds is now being released, unhindered, uninterrupted, and overflowing. You have positioned yourself beneath an open heaven, not because you have lived a life of perfection, but because you chose to walk in obedience to a higher calling. And that singular act of submission is what changed everything. The divine relationship you have fervently prayed and waited for is indeed approaching. But unlike those of the past that brought uncertainty and confusion, this relationship will bring clarity, affirmation, and divine confirmation. The generational wealth that once seemed distant, unreachable, or altogether impossible is now advancing toward you. Not solely to bless you, but to flow through you, impacting others and transforming lives beyond your own. The healing you have been yearning for within your body, your mind, and your family is not only on its way, but is already beginning to take root at the deepest levels. What once manifested in your bloodline as sickness, mental and emotional instability, and generational affliction is now being divinely reversed by a sovereign decree from heaven itself. That profound peace you have so desperately sought, the kind that does not originate from external circumstances or material possessions, but rather from divine alignment with purpose and destiny, has finally arrived. And this peace is not limited to your personal experience alone. It is expanding, stretching, and flowing into every life that is connected to your courageous and faithful yes to the calling placed upon you. Your children, your wider community, your ministry, and even individuals whom you have yet to meet, complete strangers, are about to feel the powerful and life-altering effects of your obedience. The ripple effect of your decision to walk in alignment with divine instruction is vast and unstoppable. You were the one who stood in the gap. You were the breaker of blockages, the spiritual pioneer who refused to accept limitation. You picked up the hammer of faith, of prayer, of truth, and with holy boldness, you shattered the old ceiling that confined generations before you. In doing so, you have made way for those who come after you to rise higher and go further. You are no longer in a season of waiting for the blessing to arrive, for, in truth, the blessing has been waiting on you. It has been poised, ready, and positioned, awaiting the alignment of your heart, your obedience, and your readiness to steward it well. Now the spiritual portal has been opened by your faithfulness. The path that was once obstructed has been cleared by your perseverance. The vault that held divine provision and favor has been unlocked by your unwavering trust. As a result, the river of divine favor is no longer trickling into your life in small, isolated drops. Instead, it is surging with power, in waves, not sprinkles, in sustained momentum, not fleeting moments. This is not merely a personal breakthrough intended to bless you alone. It is a sweeping, generational transformation set in motion through your obedience. You are the one who broke the curse that lingered for generations. You are the one who identified and erased the destructive pattern that once repeated itself through your lineage. And now, having done so, you are becoming the chosen vessel, the channel through which divine blessings, healing, favor, and legacy will flow to others for years to come. Chosen one, prepare yourself, because what is unfolding in this season is not merely a blessing for you, but a blessing that will flow through you. God is positioning you as a vessel, a conduit through which His goodness, provision, and purpose will be poured out onto others. There is no longer anything obstructing the flow. Every barrier that once stood in the way, be it spiritual, emotional, generational, or circumstantial, has been removed by divine authority. The path has been cleared, and now the blessing is able to move in its fullness, fully, freely, and without interruption. This is not a trickle of favor, but a continuous outpouring, an open flow that will touch everything and everyone connected to your life. Chapter 7. You are the new standard for your bloodline. You, chosen one, have been divinely appointed to become the new standard, an entirely new template for your bloodline. You do not need to return to the past in an attempt to repair what has already been lived and written, for you are not the past, you are the future. You are not called to carry the burden of rewriting the history of those who came before you. Rather, you have been commissioned to write what has never before been written, to chart a course that has never been traveled. Your assignment is not about restoration of what was lost behind you, but about the creation of what lies ahead. When future generations examine your family lineage, they will not be consumed by the memory of trauma, pain, or dysfunction as their first point of reference. Instead, they will look upon your life and boldly declare, "That is where everything changed." You will stand as the visible turning point in your lineage, the one through whom the generational narrative shifted. You will be recognized as the new standard, the divinely inspired model, the living proof that healing is not only possible but attainable. You are the evidence that obedience to God bears lasting fruit, and that an entire legacy can be transformed through the life of one soul, fully surrendered, wholly yielded, and courageously aligned with divine purpose. The old blueprint, the one marked by generational dysfunction, limitation, and spiritual bondage, has been completely erased. The curse that once governed your bloodline has been decisively broken. And now, through you, a divine pattern is being sovereignly established, not merely through words, declarations, or intentions, but through consistent action, unwavering integrity, and the exercise of true spiritual authority. Where brokenness once had dominion, a new pattern of wholeness is now taking root. Where foolishness and confusion once directed decisions, a pattern of divine wisdom is being laid. Where poverty and lack were once normalized, a blueprint of sustainable wealth and provision is being constructed. Where silence once suppressed the truth and stifled praise, there is now a pattern of authentic worship flowing freely and boldly. Where compromise once found a comfortable home, there now exists a pattern of bold, unshakable obedience, a lifestyle rooted in submission to divine instruction. You are not merely part of a temporary shift or a momentary improvement. You are a spiritual reset, a foundational reordering through which God is reestablishing His original intention for your lineage, your community, and every life connected to your obedience. Every step you have taken, whether seen or unseen, celebrated or overlooked, has contributed to the construction of something eternal, something far greater than yourself. Every tear you have shed in private sorrow has not been wasted. Instead, it has served to water the roots of a new and sacred inheritance, one that will bear fruit for generations to come. Each time you made the courageous decision to heal rather than hide, to confront hard truths rather than comply with dysfunctional patterns, to persevere and grow rather than surrender to despair, heaven took notice. None of it went unseen or unrecorded. You were not sent ahead of others because you were the strongest, the most qualified, or the most resourced. You were sent because you were willing to be broken when necessary so that others could be made whole, willing to walk alone when no one understood your calling or your burden, willing to obey divine instruction even when it cost you everything you thought you couldn't live without, willing to carry the weight of transformation on your shoulders for the sake of those who never had the strength, the clarity, or the freedom to carry it themselves. And now, the time has come for God to honor your obedience, not only in private, but with undeniable public evidence. He is not merely going to reward you behind closed doors. He is going to establish you openly, in full view of those who once doubted your calling. The very places where you were mocked, dismissed, and overlooked will now become the platforms upon which your elevation is displayed. The same family line that once felt like a burden, the lineage through which pain, struggle, or dysfunction may have flowed, will now be blessed abundantly through your surrendered life. You will not merely experience personal freedom, you will walk in generational fruitfulness. You will not simply survive seasons of hardship, you will multiply in strength, influence, and divine provision. You will not settle for breaking even, you will overflow with abundance in every area of your life. Your home will no longer reflect old patterns. It will carry a new atmosphere of peace, purpose, and presence. Your relationships will no longer be rooted in cycles of compromise or confusion. They will be firmly grounded in truth, mutual honor, and spiritual alignment. Your finances will no longer exist without direction. They will be infused with divine purpose, resourced for impact. Your children will not wander aimlessly. They will walk in wisdom, clarity, and calling. Your entire life, every corner of it, will serve as a living testimony of what becomes possible when a soul says yes to God and refuses to look back. Chosen one, the immense weight you have carried, often silently, often alone, is now being transformed into a powerful witness. The process that nearly broke you, the season that stretched you to your limits, is now producing within you a prophetic authority and spiritual depth that cannot be manufactured by comfort. You did not merely break the generational curse, you shattered it. You did not simply interrupt the dysfunctional pattern, you completely erased it, replaced it, and restructured the spiritual foundation of your entire bloodline. Because of your obedience, future generations will now walk in a level of freedom they did not have to fight for. Because of your willingness to sacrifice what was familiar, others will be born into peace instead of pain, into clarity instead of confusion. Your ceiling, the point at which you had to fight to arrive, will now become the starting point for those who come after you. So keep going. Do not look back. The enemy no longer holds the authority he once had over your life or your lineage. His grip has been broken. Your legacy is secure, not by your strength alone, but by divine design. Heaven is backing you with full authority. Earth is watching as your life becomes a living testament of transformation. Hell, though it tried to stop you, now fears the power that flows through you. And God, faithful, ever-present, is walking with you, step by step, moment by moment. You are the new standard, the evidence of what happens when a life is fully surrendered to God, and the world is about to witness the undeniable difference that kind of surrender makes. And if you're still hungry for more chapters to this journey, or a visual concept for a video or thumbnail, just say the word. I'm here and ready to help bring it all to life. Thanks for watching. Here ends this video. Take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. If you find this video interesting,